It's 2 in the afternoon on Friday, August 22nd, here in Korea, live from Seoul. I'm Hyun-yong. Let's check out the stories we're following at this hour. Prosecutors arrest 3 incumbent legislators on corruption and election law violation charges. This as President Park Geun-hye steps up her drive to root out irregularities in the public sector. The United States says the Islamic State militant group is beyond anything they've seen. The U.S. defense chief makes clear that Washington's military involvement in Iraq will continue. And Japan is asked to devise legal measures against hate speech in the country. UN committee members review the steps Tokyo has taken to rein in discriminatory actions against Koreans and others. Now, starting with politics, state prosecutors arrested 3 lawmakers late Thursday night, a first since the Park Geun-hye administration launched a campaign to stamp out corruption in the wake of April's ferry sinking. Our National Assembly correspondent Ji Myung-kil has our top story.
3 out of 5 lawmakers wanted on corruption and election law violation charges were arrested late Thursday, minutes before the National Assembly was called in to an extra session at midnight that would have given them immunity from arrest. The lawmakers who were arrested are main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy representative Kim Jae-yun and ruling Saenuri Party representatives Hyun-yong and Sang-eun. However, a local court rejected the prosecution's request to arrest 2 other lawmakers from the main opposition party. Kim Jae-yun is charged with taking up to around $50,000 in bribes from the head of a Seoul vocational school in return for favors in getting legislation passed. The ruling party's Hyun-yong is suspected of taking bribes worth more than $150,000 from a railway parts supplier in return for awarding the firm private company contracts since August 2008. Park Sang-eun has been under suspicion of taking nearly $600,000 from his former company in violation of the political funding law and covering up his illegal funds. Advocates of the government's anti-corruption drive say these arrests show the government is more than willing to track down cases of corruption and punish those involved. The government pledged to eradicate corruption in the wake of April's ferry accident, as it was found that corrupt and collusive ties between government officials and businesses played a large role in the sinking. It's a double-edged sword, though. If these lawmakers are found guilty, it'll show that representatives in the National Assembly have taken large sums of money from people, organizations, and private companies in return for influence in Parliament. Ji Myung-kil, ARIRANG News.
So another extraordinary session began at the National Assembly today with lawmakers hoping to reach a compromise on a hotly debated bill that would set up an investigation into the Seoul ferry disaster. The main opposition party, which has been representing the needs of those who lost family members in the accident, is having a difficult time getting consent from the families who rejected the latest bipartisan agreement. Both parties are facing mounting criticism as they failed to pass any other bills that have been sitting idle for months due to the delay with the ferry bill. Now, the 2 rival parties also need to fix the dates of the next parliamentary audit of government offices. A UN committee on racial discrimination has begun a review of practices in Japan for the first time since 2010. This as reports of hate speech against foreign residents, including Koreans in Japan, have come to the committee's attention. Our Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
The United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination has begun a review of concerns about hate speech against Koreans residing in Japan to determine if the country has violated the international convention aimed at eliminating racial discrimination. The review comes amid reports of anti-Korean protests on the streets of Japan, as Korea and Japan are dealing with tense diplomatic relations over historical issues. The committee has expressed particular concern about reports of a right-wing group that was said to have used racially derogatory terms against Korean residents in Japan. The committee has also urged the Japanese government to pass a new bill to bring its laws into line with the convention. Although Japan is party to the convention, it does not have a law that bans racial discrimination, including hate speech. Korean nationals in Japan say there is an urgent need for a new policy, as their rights are being violated.
Our biggest goal for the Japanese government is to pass a bill banning racial discrimination.
Tokyo says it must first determine whether a new policy will conflict with its freedom of speech laws. The International Convention took effect in 1969 and it requires parties to outlaw hate speech. Kim Jae-yun, ARIRANG News.
And North Korea will send 273 athletes and staff to the upcoming Asian Games set to begin on September 19th in Incheon, South Korea. Seoul has accepted Pyongyang's proposal to discuss the details of its participation via an exchange of letters. The message was delivered by a North Korean delegation that was in Incheon to attend the draw for the Asian Games football tournament. The final size of the delegation of more than 273 has been reduced by about 80 people. The North did not, however, comment on its plans to dispatch a cheering squad. Now, since opening their diplomatic ties 22 years ago, China has become Korea's biggest trading partner, while Korea stands as China's fourth largest. Despite the success of the trade relationship, there are challenges ahead. Our Hwang Ji-hye tells us more about those challenges as well as the future of the economic partnership.
In a little over 2 decades, Korea and China saw their trade volume increase 35-fold to over $220 billion. Now, China is Korea's biggest trading partner in terms of imports and exports, exceeding the United States and Japan and taking up more than a quarter of Korea's total exports. Korea is also China's fourth largest trading partner. But a recent slump in Korea's shipments to China that plunged 7% in July, marking the third straight month of decline, point to some challenges ahead.
The drop is coming from the slide in Chinese outbound shipments as Korean firms largely export intermediary goods to China. But aside from this kind of temporary reason, Chinese firms are now improving their own supply capacity as well.
Adding that old business strategies will no longer sustain shipments to China, experts say the focus should now be on producing high-quality finished goods. The Korean government is also joining efforts to sustain trade flows that make up half of the nation's output. Earlier this week, President Park Geun-hye asked Jack Ma, the executive chairman of Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba, to help Korea's small and medium-sized enterprises expand into China's online market. Still, there are opportunities that could lead to a pickup in exports to China.
Negotiations for the Korea-China Free Trade Agreement are in the final stages, and the deal is expected to take effect as early as next year. The trade pact could boost exports to China.
Experts that the popularity of Korean television soap operas and films in China will make it easier for local exporters to overcome uncertainties in the world's second biggest economy. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Na Hyun-yong live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Now, following reports of Islamic State militants beheading an American journalist, the United States says it will stick to its commitment to bring the group to justice. The U.S. Defense Chief says the group is beyond anything they've seen. Son Jang-in has more.
Addressing the worsening security situation in Iraq and Syria, U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel said the militant Islamic State group is beyond anything they've seen. Speaking to reporters at a Pentagon briefing on Thursday, Hagel said he assessed the group, also known as ISIL and ISIS, as elaborate with good financial support.
ISIL is as sophisticated and well-funded as any group that we have seen. They're beyond just a terrorist group.
Along with Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Martin Dempsey, Hagel stressed that U.S. military involvement in Iraq will continue with the help of other allies, as the long-term threat from IS is more dangerous than that of any other terrorist group. He noted that combating the militant group will ultimately require political reform in Iraq, but added that it is possible to contain them as the group seems to have lost momentum. He also said IS would eventually have to be defeated. Regarding the mission to rescue American hostages, including journalist James Foley, who was captured by the group last month, Dempsey defended the operation, describing it as flawless. He said they failed to recover the hostages because they had been moved to a different area. The officials said the U.S. will not relent in their efforts to bring their citizens home and their captors to justice. 손정인, 아리랑 뉴스.
Hopes are rising that the world may be one step closer to having a vaccine for Ebola as the 2 Americans who contracted the deadly virus in Liberia have survived and been discharged from the hospital. Doctors have assured that they no longer pose a threat to the public. Connie Lee reports.
2 U.S. aid workers are now clear of the Ebola virus. Dr. Kent Brantley and Nancy Reipel have been released from Emory University Hospital in Atlanta after spending nearly 3 weeks in isolation.
Today is a miraculous day.
Dr. Brantley, with the medical team that treated him, was greeted with applause at a news conference on Thursday, the day of his release.
I'm thrilled to be alive, to be well, and to be reunited with my family.
Nancy Reipel was quietly released from the hospital on Tuesday. Doctors say the patients went through rigorous treatment and testing with the experimental drug called ZMapp. And according to the doctors, they now pose no risk to the public.
The medical staff here at Emory is confident that the discharge from the hospital of both of these patients poses no public health threat.
The 2 Americans were both missionaries working in an Ebola ward in Liberia when they were infected with the virus. Soon after, they were flown from Liberia to the hospital in the United States, making them the first human patients with Ebola to ever come into the country. These 2 may have survived, but the outbreak continues to take a toll. The World Health Organization says more than 2,400 people have been infected, and more than 1,300 people have died since the outbreak was first found in West Africa back in March. So there's a continued plea to help stop the ongoing outbreak.
I am forever thankful to God for sparing my life. Please continue to pray for Liberia and the people of West Africa.
Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And back here in Korea, President Park Geun-hye has vowed to foster Korea's southern port city of Busan as a financial hub, specializing in marine and shipping finance and derivatives. The remarks were made this morning at a ceremony marking the completion of the Busan International Finance Center. The 63-story landmark will house 6 public institutions, including the Korea Exchange, as well as a guarantee agency for shipping companies. Carrying on with her economic revitalization drive, President Park has been meeting with the heads of Busan's small and mid-sized companies and promised to help them innovate projects and expand overseas by breaking the protectionism of big financial institutions. Now, if you're pregnant, you might want to pay attention to this piece of information. A new report from the U.S. warns women who are expecting to avoid eating tuna, including the canned varieties. American magazine Consumer Reports cited the relatively high levels of mercury contained in the fish as the reason for its warning. Too much mercury can damage the brain and nervous system, and fetuses and children are especially vulnerable. This magazine also says everyone should limit their tuna consumption based on their weight. The National Fisheries Institute in the U.S., which represents seafood companies and restaurants, however, has questioned the magazine's claims, saying its analysis was not a thorough or balanced examination of the data. Korean period blockbuster Roaring Currents is still going strong, smashing record after record on the domestic box office charts. Now, the overwhelming success of the movie is also driving sales of books about Korea's most revered the naval hero, Admiral Lee Sun-shin. Our Shin Se-min has the story.
Over 15 million tickets sold and still counting. Sailing past the all-time earnings champion Avatar, which racked in $122 million in the Korean market in 2009, the homegrown film Roaring Currents is looking to set a milestone that's never been reached. Choi Min-sik, who played Admiral Lee Sun-shin in the period film, says he still can't fully digest all the attention.
This is all surreal to me. I'm glad that the movie was able to open up ground that allows different generations to come together.
Korea's most watched movie of all time hasn't just been a hit on the silver screens. The craze has permeated into other industries, leading to increased sales of books and even modules related to Admiral Lee.
Miniatures of the battleship used during the battle have tripled the sales in this particular action figure store, and interest is growing.
Watching the film has broadened my view, and these replica figures and even unknown books on Admiral Yi now catch my attention.
Biography and non-fiction titles are also feeling the boom. More readers are looking for books on Korea's most famous admiral, and according to Kobo Bookstore, the number of books sold have surged sixfold compared to the same period last year. And as to why all this interest is being garnered, movie critic Chun Chan-il says the element and timing of the movie's release lent to its success.
The fact that there isn't a firm role model like Admiral Lee in the nation is eventually coming to light through the popularity of this movie. It means that many people are wanting to rest and lean on such leadership that's shown by the character.
Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
So last weekend, the movie became the most successful film of all time in Korea. But with the end of the summer blockbuster season in sight, you will soon want to see new films on the movie theaters. So to give us more details about Roaring Currents' historic run and a glimpse of what to look forward to in theaters in the near future, our film critic Piers Conran joins me in the studio. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see you again.
Yeah, so Roaring Currents, it's showing no signs of, it's breaking record after record again, and it's still going strong.
Yeah, I mean, it's on just completely historic run. No one's been denying that for a while now. It broke every record it could at the gate, and of course, it's crossed the all-time mark set by Avatar 5 years ago, which was 13.3 million. It did that very, very late on Friday last week, so just under a week ago. And after another big weekend, it's now sitting over 15 million. It's at 15.45. It's still going, still #1, though it is slowing down finally. And it'll go a little further. The only thing left for it to do is cross Avatar's revenue total. Even though it's already sold more tickets, Avatar had a much bigger total because of 3D ticket sales. So there was kind of that premium. Roaring Currents, as big as it is, still just a 2D film.
Okay.
So, but it'll cross that in the next day or two. So at that point, there'll be nothing left for it to beat.
So that is something, right? So its success, has it taken wind out of other releases? Though I heard The Pirates has been doing pretty well.
Absolutely. The Pirates has been doing well. Now, Roaring Currents did come in and just really kind of suck the wind out of the, well, excuse the unfortunate pun, suck the wind out of the sales of other releases like Kundo. And even Pirates had actually a fairly small debut compared to these 3 big period blockbusters. But then it held quite well and has managed to, it dipped very lightly in its second week. And it's sitting on almost 5 million admissions, which is pretty impressive, and we'll still bank a little more before it's all said and done. What has suffered a lot is Haemu, and that's something that I'm sad about because that was by far and away my favorite of all those 4 blockbusters. And while Roaring Currents,
Kim Yun-suk?
That's right, yeah, Kim Yun-suk and Park Geun-hye from the JYJ pop star.
Oh, Park Geun-hye.
Yeah. And this is a wonderful film. It's very dark, and you know it's produced by Bong Joon-ho, who I'm a huge fan of. But whereas Roaring Currents kind of benefited from the Sewol disaster in an unfortunate and unforeseen way, whereas people wanted something to kind of latch on to something good, to something proud to see again. Haemu unfortunately opens those wounds right back up again, so I think a lot of viewers were not ready to go and see that.
So what else are we looking forward to after the boom of Roaring Currents calms down a little bit?
Well, I don't know if that's going to be quite over just yet. Roaring Currents is still going to be, at the top for just a little while longer. But it is true we're past that season of the big blockbusters. The Hollywood blockbusters have been and gone, and after 4 weeks, that's it for the Korean blockbusters in terms of the new ones. So this week we have there are some new films finally kind of daring to enter the marketplace again. Among those, we have anyone that's still looking for a late summer action kick. Need look no further than The Expendables 3. This is of course, now in its third installment, this kind of fairly successful franchise by Sylvester Stallone, where he kind of brings together all the kind
legendary.
All the legendary 80s and 90s male action stars. It's like real kind of testosterone-driven, high-octane stuff. But it certainly does the job for whoever wants to see that. Beyond that, there's also, for anyone who wants another horror fix, there's Tunnel 3D, which is a new Korean horror film. I've not seen it myself. I haven't heard the best things, but this film did play at PFAN, had its world premiere there last month. And then we have Begin Again, which opened last week, which is kind of a music-themed rom-com, which has been kind of a sleeper hit. Did very well in the States, and people, the word of mouth is very strong in that. Though I would recommend, from what I've seen, is My Ordinary Love Story, which was the closing film of PFAN. It also seems to be a rom-com. It's a Korean film, but it takes quite a turn, and it's really worth seeking out. It's a surprising film in a good way.
Who's starring in the My Ordinary Love Story?
Well, it's Kang Ye-won and Song Se-byuk. Song Se-byuk really impressed me earlier this year in the film A Girl at My Door. Normally he's kind of a, yucky kind of funny guy, and in this other film he really kind of changes character, and he gets to kind of show his acting chops in this film as well. So it's worth a watch.
All right, and Chuseok, of course, Korea's Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and there will be other movies released during that week, during the holidays. So what else are we looking forward to in those holiday season?
Well, again, this is a big Korean holiday, so we expect to have big Korean films. It tends to be that Hollywood kind of tries not to kind of put the pressure on too much. They know when the odds are stacked against them.
Not to enter the market.
So there are two big Chuseok films this year. Those are Taja the Hidden Card, which is of course the sequel to the first Taja, which was subtitled The High Rollers. So that was 8 years ago. It's a long time. But we don't have the same lead anymore. The lead now is Jae Sung-hyun, who is T.O.P. from Big Bang.
And, Top.
Yeah, Top. Oh, sorry. I'm not so familiar with K-pop. And then we have Kim Yoon-suk again is in this, and a bunch of other stars. So it's real again this ensemble, very stylish, fun film. And it's directed by the person who, Kang Hyong-chul, who made Sunny, which is another very colorful, very popular film from a few years ago. I expect us to do very well, a lot of goodwill from the first film, and it looks very flashy and fun. It'll go up against My Brilliant Life, which is a kind of a tear-jerking melodrama with Song Hye-kyo and Kang Dong-won, so two very big stars. Yeah, huge stars. This screened for the press yesterday. And the reactions so far have been very, very positive. Korean melodramas can be very, very cloying sometimes. This sounds like it's a pretty classy affair. I look forward to seeing that one soon.
All right. Are there any room left for Hollywood films?
Well, normally I would say no, but they are venturing in with one big film this time. And this is a film that would have been released earlier, but it would have been an early August release, but again, because of the Hollywood the Korean blockbusters at that time, they pushed it back. But now I think they're very happy to release it. It's called Lucy. It's this action film by Luc Besson with Scarlett Johansson, and also in a supporting role, Chae Min-sik. And of course, after the rock star success of Roaring Currents, I think the timing is actually perfect for this Hollywood debut, his Hollywood debut, to enter the Korean market. So that might actually give these Korean films quite a run for its money.
And that's set to be released on September 4th?
Yeah, they're all released on the 3rd or 4th, basically, Wednesday and Thursday.
So we'll have to see if Lucy will fare in the domestic cinema market. Thank you very much, Pierce, for coming into the studio today.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. After the cool, rainy week that we had, we are finishing off our week seeing some sunshine. Now, also, as soon as the rain cleared, we've gained another hot day all across the nation, and the temperature seems to be lingering back into the 30s for some regions. And it looks like our weekend is looking favorable as well with hot temperatures, and so I hope you enjoy and plan your last-minute summer outings. Now, with the temperatures going up intensively, causing instability in the atmosphere, we can expect a sudden showers this afternoon in some regions of Gyeonggi-do Province, Chungcheongbuk-do Province, and the south of Gangwon-do Province of up to 40 millimeters. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out this afternoon at 29 in the afternoon, and the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top out into the high 20s as well. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island will top out at 28, Dokdo hits 26, while Namkang tops out at 30. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Hyun-yong.
All right, thank you, Michelle, for that. That's all we have for you now. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more updates at 4 p.m. Korea time.